Today we went back to the old classic pick a town on the world map, make a town map for it, and make a quest while we're doing that. And what we ended up with is a wild multi-option quest that actually leads into our first proper quest line. As always, if you're interested in this quest or the quest line it will be a part of, then check out the Patreon, join us on the Twitch if you want to help make these resources, and with that, let's just dive straight into it. After giving the world map a scan, we chose to place the quest in a nation we hadn't done anything with yet, the Horn of Radigan, picking the titular Horn City. As we think of quests, I do like to use these sort of very prominent features as guiding lights, to mind the pun about lighthouses, as sort of inspiration of what's going on in this town. So definitely lighthouse is going to be one of the things we go on. We can even write that down. It can be our first thing here. Lighthouse. There we go. And this lighthouse would become a major feature for this quest, even spurring the main objectives. Yeah, often in D&D, the party attacks into things, which makes a lot of sense because, you know, you want them to have agency and things like that. But I think it could be interesting. It's like possibly setting up, you know, setting up like a little defense and you just have, as the DM, a bunch of different monsters and zombies run into the town and the party have to protect an area. That could be really fun. That could be something a little bit different. With this town map making process, I wanted to try a little bit of a different style than I usually do. Usually I have the buildings isolated and disconnected, never really touching. But just as I do with quest making, I like to challenge myself and try new things. So for this town, I wanted to make it a little denser, having the buildings overlapping. While trying it out early though, we came up with an architectural pattern that could represent the lore of the town. So there's going to be a little bit of experimentation with this, which is exciting. I'm very keen to experiment. You know, maybe we can have a little bit of like the old town. Actually, maybe we can have a bit of the old town like near the lighthouse, like this, and then, you know, the new expanded like immigrants which have come from the different nations, which have sort of like moved in because of, you know, the general rabble going on. We can have the sort of diversity of buildings down there to sort of represent that diversity. I think that could be like a really fun way to do it. The idea that there would be a significant visual divide between the multi-generation residents and the new immigrants would then become a metaphor for the ideological divide between the old town wanting to hold onto power and continue with their politics, and the new immigrants wanting to join the revolution and fully become a part of the new nation the Horn of Radigan is creating. These two groups would then be our first two factions for the upcoming quest. The current power holders wanting to maintain the status quo, continuing their existence as an independent city, and the new crew who want to take control of the town and integrate it into the revolutionary nation they neighbor. These two factions would be referred to as the Light Keepers and the Verdant Fell. But these would just be two of the groups, and Clueless would make a suggestion for the lighthouse that would spark the third. Okay, the first version of the lighthouse still has an intact bit at the bottom of the lighthouse. It's a basement with wine cellars, bedrooms, prison cells. An ancient pirate still held in the bottom is slowly waking up, persuasively drawing more and more pirates, but not even the pirates known they are drawn to the tower. Ooh, yeah, I really like that as this sort of like ancient presence, just sort of like slowly bringing people in, slowly sort of, you know, the pirates are here, so it makes sense that they come and they're just like, yeah, this is just like a natural place to go. But there's also like, they keep hitting this town over and over again, like obsessively, and they're just doing it for what they perceive to be as fun, for what they perceive to be as just some light raiding. But really, they, unbeknownst to themselves, are drawn to this location because of this ancient presence within the lighthouse. I really, really like that as a concept. With the factions established and the general idea of the town getting attacked by pirates thought up, we went around completing the town while working on the lore. As we filled out the town, I made a couple of little areas I really liked, such as this garden for the church, which had been destroyed in a previous raid, along with this other garden, which was made by the immigrants and has a special importance to them. Importance we'd figure out in the future. As we kept going, I felt more and more competent with the city style and kept getting a better grasp on how the town of Lightbreach should look. I've been saying I've been a little bit shaky with it. Not 100% sure how I think it's coming together, but I will say, I think it is starting to look pretty good, and I'm definitely getting happier with it as we've continued to expand And I think, you know, the idea of it, I think this entire area is a little bit too big. I think the idea of it is really sort of starting to pay off a bit. As I always like to do, I like to lean on the natural development of the town map to derive lore and relationships for the quest and the town. But I think they could have maybe put down this delineation line after people started moving in, building a bit of a green wall to do it, and done by some, like, sort of in that cynical, like, no, it's because it's beautiful, it's because it's pretty, but it's like clearly being done as a way to sort of, you know, segregate, you know, literally, from the old town and the new town. Before we turned these foundations into a quest and started writing out the various quest lines, we spent some time figuring out the factions, adding another into the mix, the Ragamuffins. So these guys are much more organized, have much more desire to influence change, and, you know, ultimately are like kind of okay with these guys, but do want to sort of like shift these away from the Silver Veil and Old Guard alliance. Obviously the Old Guard doesn't even exist, so probably the falling apart of that alliance, and creating this sort of like, you know, more connected association with the rest of the Horn of Radagan. These guys obviously, like, you know, whatever they can sort of be against that or sort of preventing that. Meanwhile, these guys down here sort of follow that third element, which it's like, you know, maybe you have a little bit of the Beggars Guild, maybe, you know, they're a bit more rambly and ad hoc, but these guys are like coming down and like facilitating themselves as like spies or thieves or, you know, maybe merchants. Kind of like an interesting collective of individuals can be sort of down here. For this quest though, as we wrote it, they have a spy from the Old Guard who will approach the party and actually ask the party to work with the pirates. But depending on which nations the party have interacted with, this NPC could be a spy from any nation. This is also when we started thinking about having this quest bleed into a second quest. And I think, like, on the other side, the Ragamuffins basically want the party to pretend to protect it, but actually be working with the pirates, and they're going to break in and activate this pirate lord. Because I think the Old Guard maybe helping the Old Guard and even taking over this town could be like a really interesting thing where it's like, you know, you can protect the town or you can take it over, or maybe not take it over, but like help ransack it. Because the Old Guard aren't necessarily like super interested in expanding, but maybe they could expand out here. Maybe that could be a potential quest line. I think that's fun. With the basic premise put down, the party can protect the town or attack the town, we move to figure out some NPCs, starting with the pirate lord trapped in the lighthouse. They used to be the leader of this town. They used to be pirates. Silvervale, the Old Guard were like, enough of this pirates taking over this cove. Let's come in. Let's imprison this immortal pirate lord. Let's make this our like safe haven lighthouse city. And let's, you know, make it something good, which they did, and they've been in this lighthouse for 500 years. Let's just make it a bonkers amount of time. This pirate lord would have also recently risen from a comatose state and would be alive, but borderline dead, because, you know, they've just been dying here in a basement for the last 400 years. This means even though they are very powerful, at the moment they're incredibly weak and unable to break out of the lighthouse by themselves, thus justifying why the party are needed to help break them out. We would also expand upon this a little bit when working on the actual lighthouse map. I think that's a fun idea too. I think something that could also be interesting off that is like the pirate, immortal pirate ghost being that kind of sits in the basement. They could ask the party to go to this other realm, and that figure is actually like a ghostly lighthouse keeper. They're like, that's their antagonist. And the reason that they've been kept in this basement is in part because they're too weak. They've been comatose for like, you know, 4 centuries or whatever it is. But maybe they could be sent to go to that place as a way to like, hey, I can't actually like physically, my body cannot physically leave this until you kill that lighthouse keeper. That could be something interesting as well. The Lighthouse Battle Map stream I just mentioned also has its own video which goes over how we made the lighthouse and all the different things about that, so check out that video when it comes out very soon. We then moved on to making an NPC for the current leadership, using our NPC randomizer for a little bit of stimulus, as we have been getting into the habit of doing lately. I don't know if that image is quite matching that, but that's fine. We decided to make Jade the head of the town guard, an outwardly rude figure who doesn't care much about the life of the citizens and freely uses them to protect the lighthouse. When they die doing such a thing, their deaths only affecting him in turns that they make the next raid harder to repel. Without too much delay, we went back to the randomizer and conjured up a representative of the Verdant Fell. Okay, so this person is from a temple. Temple's elite. I think that means they're going to be from the Gilded Fang. I mean, like, we look at the architecture that they're a part of. We go down here, Gilded Fang. It's the same architecture. These guys have temples. I think it makes sense. And if it makes sense, you know, we don't need to overthink it. Using the inspiration given, we made a 22-year-old child of the Gilded Fang elite. To make it a little bit more spicy, we styled them as a rich and privileged revolutionary, participating mostly performatively. To add to this, we made it so they were still funded by their parents, really leaning on this archetype. This certainly isn't how I would have constructed this character if it wasn't for the randomizer, but I think it made something more unique and ultimately makes the choice of who to side with harder, as Cloud comes with some inherent unlikability that might dissuade the party from allying with them, while also painting the revolution as a whole in a drearier light, which will set up nicely for some counterpoint NPCs in Quest 2. To round out the bout of NPC creation, we flicked to the Old Guard Spy, who admittedly I was the least interested in, but the randomizer spat something out which I think made for an incredibly intriguing character. You know what, let's just get every single one of these in. Let's go crickety cray with it. Randomize. Oh, Ialina Ialina Cap Haxath. 248 years old. Oh my god. High Elf, Fighter, City Watch. Oh. Ialina would end up being not housed on the outside of town with the rest of the Ragamuffins, but would be from an old Lightbreach family. Over the last 2 centuries, they have traveled around the world, periodically returning to Lightbreach. In the last half century, they have aligned with the Old Guard and became a renowned pirate. However, last year they returned to Lightbreach working as a spy for the Old Guard, as they have been drawn here like so many pirates before them. Only recently have they discovered the secret of the ancient pirate Lord Needleboots, and they want the party to help with the assault so they can finally free them. In this year, they have become the number 2 member of the town guard, which I think makes more sense than them being an outside spy. With these NPCs created, it was then onto the standard practice of fleshing out the lore, adding in more details, and connecting everything to make it an actual coherent quest. One idea we established was that the party is specifically needed because the raids have become more and more consistent and the town is getting weaker and weaker. When making quests like this, you can often get away with the party being asked to do something simply because it's a quest and it'll lead to a fun session. But I do try to create a sense of necessity or a reason for why this group of adventurers, the party, would be asked specifically for help. Why do the NPCs want their help? Why are they being treated differently from regular travelers? And I think in this case, the idea that the town is literally running out of people to defend adds into the narrative, but also reinforces the idea that the party has to choose between the 2 places to defend, the garden or the lighthouse, as the town can no longer defend them themselves. And with this, whichever they don't protect will falter and fall. At this point, I thought I was done with NPC creations, but that is why I love the chat getting involved, because Gift of Gabby made a really good suggestion. At this point, the antagonist zombie pirates had been a fairly anonymous and nondescript group so far. But bouncing off Gabby's suggestions, we decided to make the captain of this raid an actual NPC. Clothing. I like that. It's a zombie army, but instead of them being all like ramshackled and crazy with it, they're like wearing uniforms. Presentable uniforms. Yeah, I like a zombie army all being uniformed and having like a very formal lich that's like, you know, wants them to look nice while they do their looting and raiding. This new NPC would also introduce the idea that the party can actually start a different version of this quest in the Old Guard. This quest would be a part of an Old Guard specific quest line where the party becomes certified pirates, which I love because I want to make the world feel entwined and interactive with each other and really get across that You can start anywhere in the world and there will be things to do, and having these crossing paths and narratives from different perspectives really adds into the narrativization of the world and having it develop as a real life thing. At this point, I haven't made the quest yet, but I eventually will make this separate quest and it will get its own video. This would spell the end of the quest apart from some touch-ups and formatting of the document. The party can either defend a lighthouse or a garden or turn against the town and free an immortal pirate lord that has only just risen from their 4 centuries long coma. The standard 3 options you have with most quests. This quest was also designed to set up for a second quest where the party can properly help one of the factions take over the town, whether it's the Verdant Fell joining the Horn of Radigan, the current Light Breach maintaining control, or the Old Guard coming in and establishing a pirate cove. On top of this, any other nations whose spies may be there are able to get control of the city as well. And to make this quest feel like a part 2, we would make it so whichever factions the party don't side with would have their key NPCs die after the raid, leading to an easier town takeover in the next quest. All the quests I've made so far are really done in isolation. They span a single to a few sessions, but can be slotted into any campaign. This is the first multi-quest arc that we've created. So I'm really excited to embark on quest 2 in the quest line and really start to pull out the depth that the party can really get into, especially if we combine it with the variation of the quest, which starts in the Old Guard and with the party siding with the pirates from the start. Anyway, that's the video. As always, if you want access to this quest or any resource I've ever made, check out the Patreon, join us on Twitch to help make stuff live. If you like this content, then subscribe to the channel for more weekly D&D resource creation. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye.